In the shadowed heart of Blackthorn territory, there lived a girl named Alira Voss. She was the lowest-ranked Omega in the Ashwood pack. For as long as anyone could remember, she had been small, quiet, and slow to heal. She could not shift fully like the other wolves in her pack. When the moon rose full and bright, and every young wolf ran through the forest with pride, Alira could only manage a half form, trembling and weak, before collapsing in the grass. The pack elders called her cursed. They said her blood was thin, that something in her line had gone wrong many generations ago. Even her own parents seemed embarrassed by her. Her older brother and sister were strong fighters, admired by everyone, while Alira was left to clean, to serve, to stay quiet in corners during pack meetings. She grew used to being invisible. She grew used to being told she was less. But there was one place where Alira felt free. Every full moon, when the rest of the pack gathered to celebrate their strength, she would slip away into the Whispering Woods. The trees there were old, taller than any building humans had ever built, and their leaves moved even when there was no wind. Alira never told anyone she went there. She did not know, and no one in her pack remembered, that the Whispering Woods bordered a forbidden land. It was the home of the ancient wolves, spirits older than any living pack, wolves so powerful that even the mightiest alpha kings feared to speak their name aloud. No living soul had seen them in over 300 years. Alira only knew that within those woods, she did not feel small. She would sit beneath a great oak tree, listen to the wind moving through the leaves, and let herself cry when the day had been too hard. The forest never judged her. It never called her weak. Her life continued this way for years, filled with small hurts and quiet loneliness, until the night everything changed. It began without warning. A rival pack called the Direfangs launched a surprise attack on Ashwood territory. They came under cover of darkness, moving fast and without mercy, hoping to seize the land while Ashwood's strongest warriors were away at a gathering in the north. Fire spread through the village. Wolves howled in warning, then in pain. Homes that had stood for generations were torn apart in minutes. Alira woke to the sound of screaming. She rushed outside to find chaos everywhere. Warriors clashed in the moonlight, blood staining the earth, while terrified pups and elders ran for shelter. An older wolf grabbed her by the arm and shouted at her to take the children and flee toward the eastern caves. She was too weak to fight, he said. She would only be a burden on the battlefield. Alira did not argue. She gathered the children she could find and began leading them away from the fighting, her heart pounding with fear. But as she moved through the trees, she heard a small cry behind her. She turned and saw a young pup, no older than 5, who had become separated from the group. He was frozen in fear, facing a Direfang warrior twice his size, fangs bared, ready to strike. Alira did not think. She turned and ran back. She threw herself between the pup and the attacking wolf, her arms wrapped around the small, trembling body, expecting pain, expecting the end. But something inside her broke open in that moment, something that had been sleeping her whole life. She fell to her knees in the dirt, and from her throat came a sound unlike anything she had ever made. It was not a growl, it was not a howl, it was a call, ancient and aching, woven from fear and love and a bloodline she never knew she carried. The forest went silent. Even the fires seemed to pause. Then they came. From between the trees stepped wolves larger than any Alira had ever seen, their bodies shifting between shadow and solid form, their eyes glowing like dying stars. They moved like a living storm across the battlefield, silver light trailing behind them, and the Direfang warriors froze in terror before turning to flee. The ancient wolves did not attack without reason. They simply appeared, and their presence alone was enough to end the fight. Within minutes, the invaders were driven back across the border, and the woods fell quiet once more. Alira knelt in the center of it all, the pup still held tightly in her arms, her whole body shaking. She could feel something crackling faintly beneath her skin, like a current of light trying to find its way out. She did not understand what had happened. She only knew that she was still alive, and so was the child in her arms. It was then that Alpha King Draven Ashcombe arrived. Draven ruled over all 5 territories. He was the strongest alpha in living memory, feared and respected by every pack, human and wolf alike. He had come the moment word reached him of the attack, arriving just as the ancient wolves were fading back into the trees. He stood at the edge of the clearing, unable to move, staring at the frail Omega he had once passed without a second glance during a pack gathering months before. He had barely remembered her name. Now she knelt at the center of a battlefield, having called forth creatures that legend said obeyed no one. Something inside Draven's chest went still. His wolf, proud and ancient, did not growl or posture as it usually did in moments of danger. It simply watched her, quiet and reverent, in a way it had never done before, not even in the presence of other Alpha Kings. He crossed the battlefield quickly, kneeling beside her as her strength finally gave out. She swayed, her eyes fluttering closed, and he caught her before she could fall, lifting her gently into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. He could feel her heartbeat, fast and weak, against his chest, and for reasons he could not explain, the sight of her like this, fragile yet having just done something impossible, made something in him ache. He carried her back to what remained of the village himself, refusing to let anyone else touch her. Healers were called immediately. The pup she had saved would not stop crying until he was allowed to sit beside her bed, holding her hand while she slept. Illyra woke 2 days later to find herself in an unfamiliar room, warm and quiet, sunlight coming through tall windows. She sat up slowly, confused, and found Draven sitting nearby, watching her with an expression she did not recognize on the face of an Alpha King. It was not pity, it was not disinterest. It looked almost like wonder. He explained what had happened as gently as he could. He told her about the ancient wolves, about the legends surrounding them, and how no living soul had seen them answer a call in over 3 centuries. He asked her, carefully, if she knew why they had come for her. Illyra did not know. She had never felt anything unusual inside herself, only weakness, only the constant sense that her body was failing to become what it was supposed to be. But, as Draven spoke, something in his words stirred a memory, faint and distant, of stories her grandmother used to whisper to her as a child. Stories about a bloodline so old it had faded from every pack record. A bloodline called the First Callers. The First Callers, Draven explained, were said to be the original guardians who had bonded the ancient wolves to the mortal world many generations ago. Their gift was rare and dangerous, a power too vast for an ordinary body to hold safely. Over time, the bloodline had scattered, thinned, and eventually was believed to have died out entirely. No one had imagined it might still exist, hidden and suppressed, inside a girl the world had written off as weak. Illyra's weakness, it turned out, had never truly been weakness. Her body had been holding back a strength too enormous to release carelessly, containing it instinctively for her entire life. It had only broken free in a moment of complete desperation, when love for a child who was not even her own outweighed every fear she had ever carried. When news of what happened spread through the pack, the reaction was mixed. Some looked at her with awe, whispering about the First Callers, as though she were something out of legend come to life. Others, especially those who had mocked her for years, avoided her eyes entirely, ashamed of how they had treated her. Her own family did not know how to speak to her anymore. The sister who once looked past her now stared with something like fear. But Draven did not look at her with fear, and he did not look at her the way the others did, as though she were suddenly a title or a weapon to be used. He visited her often in the days that followed, sitting with her simply to talk, asking about her life, her memories, the things she loved, the quiet moments in the whispering woods that had once been her only comfort. He listened as though her words mattered, as though she mattered, not because of what she had done, but because of who she was. Illyra found herself, for the first time in her life, being truly seen. One evening, as the sun set over the rebuilding village, Draven found her sitting near the edge of the Whispering Woods, the same place she used to escape to as a girl. He sat beside her quietly, watching the light fade through the trees. He told her that he had spoken with his council, and that he intended to place her under his personal protection, regardless of pack tradition. Many of his advisors had objected, worried about what it meant for an Alpha King to align himself so closely with someone from the lowest rank of another pack. He told her he did not care what they thought. He had seen what she was capable of, not just in power, but in courage, in the simple act of turning back for a child, when she had every reason to run. Illyra felt tears rise in her eyes, but for the first time, they were not tears of loneliness. She had spent her whole life believing she was less, believing her weakness made her unworthy of love or respect. Now the strongest Alpha King in the 5 territories sat beside her, speaking to her not as a burden, but as someone worth protecting, worth knowing, worth choosing. As the last light faded and the stars began to appear above the whispering woods, a faint silver glow stirred once more beneath her skin, gentle this time, calm rather than desperate. The ancient wolves did not appear that night. They did not need to. Their presence remained with her quietly, a part of her now, no longer a secret buried beneath years of fear. Draven reached over and took her hand, and Illyra did not pull away. She sat there beside him, the girl once called the pack's weakest Omega, now carrying a strength older than any living memory, and for the first time in her life, she did not feel small. She felt seen, she felt valued, she felt, at last, like she belonged. The battle had ended, the wounds would heal, and the whispers about her would eventually fade into something new, no longer mockery, but respect. But none of that mattered as much as this quiet moment beneath the stars, sitting beside someone who saw her, not for her rank or her bloodline, but for her heart. And as the wind moved gently through the ancient trees, Illyra finally understood that she had never truly been weak. She had simply been waiting, all along, for the right moment to become who she was always meant to be.